What's going on, everybody? I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast, and it is a hell of a day to talk ball. Week 7 Sunday was absolutely electric, especially because as we are going live right now on YouTube, shout out to you all who are with us live, Giants Broncos just ended, and it had to be one of the most bizarre games I've ever seen. Joining me to talk a little ball here tonight. What are you shaking your head over there? It is my good friend Chris Allen. Chris, what's going on, buddy?
I'm flabbergasted. I'm flabbergasted by what we just witnessed there in that particular game. And it wasn't just that one. I mean, we saw the blowout in Dallas going up against the Commanders. So many good games throughout the day. And it just reminds me that, I mean, you and I, we create content essentially for a living, and we project, we prognosticate, we analyze this game forwards and backwards, and the players get the last word, man. We say a whole lot of stuff, and it really just comes down to what the players do on the field. And we saw just such good football today. I can't wait to dive into it with you, man.
Absolutely. Right before we went live, I was like, should we just talk about this Broncos Giants game right off the top? Because it literally just ended and it was so insane. But I need actually a second to digest and come down from that insanity. So we're going to get into that. Here's the structure of this show for those of you who are just joining us for the first time this year. If you are, shout out to you. Appreciate it. We go through the first segment. It is the games we care most about. Plus, we give you our boom and bust players of the week. Second segment, that's the games that we sort of care about. And third segment, that's the games that could have been an email. There are some very, very big time email games with some big potential consequences in those emails when we get to them. But that is a long time from now. First, let's give out our boom and bust players here for week 7. Our boom player of the week, and there was a lot of options to choose from, but we went ahead and went with Devontae Smith, Eagles wide receiver. Hard to pick between the two Eagles wide receivers, Chris, because they both went off, which stunned me in this game. You just perfectly said this, Chris, intro there. You could do all your projecting, and I brought up the stats on Fantasy Football Live about how Jalen Hurts struggles against these zone defenses, how the Eagles have been really bad against the blitz. All these things would lead you to a potential down game for the Eagles passing game. And yet, Devontae Smith turns in the highest yardage total of his entire NFL career with 183 on 9 catches and a touchdown.
Well, of course, you had to start Devonta Smith in this game, right? Everybody knew coming into this game you had to start him. He had 2 targets 3 weeks ago, then was 10 targets the week after that. It was down to 5. We all knew just by the law of up and down or whatever adage you want to go by that this had to be the game that he would pop off. So, I mean, congrats to all of you that wound up starting. I actually benched him in a league because I did have some other potential better options. So I'm staring down the barrel of a loss with 20 plus points or 30 points sitting on my bench, which is excellent. But still, this is the type of game where you would hope as an Eagles fan, you would see this type of game coming out of Kevin Patullo and also Jalen Hurts. I mean, how often they were looking to both Devonta Smith and AJ Brown. We'll get to this game later, but just seeing how well both wide receivers went operating in that passing game. I mean, of course, for Eagles fans, they have to love it. And for folks that have both AJ Brown and Devonta Smith on their roster, hopefully this is a sign of things changing for the better for the Eagles passing game.
Yeah, we'll fully break that game down here in just a moment. It's the first game that we're going to touch on, actually. But yeah, it was interesting in this one where they hit the long plays. The players showed up, and you said this perfectly, Chris. The players get the last word, and the Eagles passing game players had the last word in this game without a question, including Devontae Smith, who has just, I think, played fantastic football all season long, and now the box score is backing it up. So that's really cool to see. What goes up must also come down, and let's talk about our bust player of the week. Ironically, a player from the same school, from the same draft class, in Jalen Waddle, actually here with just 2 points in this game. If Miami Dolphins, Cleveland Browns, the Dolphins get obliterated by the Cleveland Browns. Looks like a real nightmare down there in Miami right now. And a guy in Jalen Waddle who had really been excellent the last couple of weeks in replacement of Tyreek Hill with the number 1 wide receiver for the Miami Dolphins, just has a complete floor game here. 1 catch for 15 yards, Chris.
Yeah, and probably the worst 4 words any Dolphins fan wants to hear at this point. Here comes Quinn Ewers, because Tua Tagovailoa winds up
Ugh.
getting replaced in this game. So I know that it was going to be a windy and rainy game for both teams playing in this game in Cleveland, but didn't really seem to be all too much of an issue for the Browns moving the football as compared to the Dolphins. So we've probably been talking about it, or a lot of fans and pretty much the league in general has been circling the potential for the release or removal of Mike McDaniels from play calling. I do wonder if this is going to be this, like, the nail in the coffin for him. But yeah, for Waddle specifically, thinking he was going to essentially absorb a lot of that Tyreek Hill usage and not really seeing some of that, or at least the production that we would want, having him elevated to this wide receiver one role. I know the Browns defense can be something of a tough out, but this type of performance, it's tough to see.
And to literally add injury to insult with this stat line here, Jalen Waddle was banged up late in this game on a very questionable pass from your boy Quinn Ewers, who you just mentioned there. Both Jalen Waddle and Darren Waller went down with injuries in this game, so we'll monitor their status throughout the week. But yeah, it seems that, remember when Mike McDaniel said early on in the season, well, it can't get any worse. Like I said, when he said that, Chris, that is what people say when it is about to get much, much worse. And it has only gotten worse for Miami. So, all right, those are your boom and bust players of the week. Now, let's get into the games that we care about most, starting with that Eagles-Vikings game. Eagles 28, Vikings 22. Couple of stats to read off about Jalen Hurts here from Sheil Kapadia of The Ringer. Jalen Hurts, 19 of 23 for 326 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Based on EPA per pass play, it's not only the second best game of Hurts's entire career, it's also the second best game by any quarterback against Brian Flores in the last 3 seasons, which, again, I can't say this enough. Did not see this game coming at all. I thought this would be a really tough spot for the Eagles passing game based on the on-paper matchup. Well, the Eagles, and it at times here, it felt as if the Eagles were a little bit stop-start on a down-to-down basis against this Brian Flores defense. But when it came time to push the good plays, they threw to the good players, and Jalen Hurts completed all 5 of his deep pass attempts for 215 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Minnesota Vikings. So the talent just took that on-paper matchup and lit it right on fire, Chris Allen.
Yeah, and I would say from a process standpoint, if Brian Flores was going to try and approach defending a passer like Jalen Hurts, you'd want to try and throw everything in the kitchen sink at him. And I think, again, from a process standpoint, he went the right route. 57.7% of Jalen Hurts dropbacks, it was a blitz, so sending 5 or more defenders. But this was just the game where Hurts was ready for it, man. 10 of 12, 220 yards and 2 touchdowns against the blitz. They were well prepared in this game for the type of defense that Flores was going to try and pitch to Jalen Hurts. And of course, we already talked about how well both A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith were operating against that coverage. 4.5 seconds on that first touchdown to A.J. Brown, 4.5 second time to throw before Jalen Hurts launched it down the left sideline and let Brown take it into the end zone afterwards. So well done for just the passing game as a whole. And again, hats off to both Patullo and Hurts for, after a couple of weeks of just general consternation about how this offense was going to operate, we at least see the passing game take off, but still some questions about Saquon Barkley and the rushing attack.
Yeah, before we get to Saquon Barkley and just their ground game and some of the fits and starts there, I don't really know. This Eagles team just does this all the time, right? Like, they go through these weeks, they go through these stretches where there's just they're in a slog. AJ Brown is kind of pissed. Jalen Hurts is giving his quotes to the media, these inspirational things about the quiet competitor or whatever, and the spotlight is on him. And then they have one of these games where they actually don't change anything up from a process standpoint. Because a lot of these passes, to me, Chris, it was straight line vertical stuff, which is what they run in Philadelphia, regardless of who the coordinator is. And this time, the quarterback hit him, the receivers caught him. It's just like, do you take anything from this and say, okay, all is fixed now in Philadelphia, or are you expecting some of this volatility, these ceiling games versus the floor games throughout the rest of the season?
Well, looking at some of their matchups moving forward, I would say it's going to be more of what you just described, of it being more up and down. They get the rematch against the Giants next week. So that should be more of, let's see if this can continue. And especially with some of the injuries that the Giants defenders that they sustained in this game, if that carries over into week 8, that might be a way for them to at least carry some of that confidence moving forward. But they get their bye, and then they come out in week 10 against the Packers, and then they have the Lions. So the games where, assuming that the Lions get back to their, get healthy, that those should be more of the games where if we see this type of performance in weeks 11, 12, somewhere in there, I would have more confidence about this is the team that we would expect to make another deep playoff run and potentially contend for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Jalen Hurts passing chart right now. I see one completion in between the hashes here, which is just, I mean, that's
that tracks. Yeah, that definitely
tracks, right? So it's like sometimes when you're kind of living on this razor's edge, even when the matchup is as bad as it is, sometimes when your good players are just good, I don't, again, it sounds simplistic and stupid, but that just is football sometimes. You mentioned the ground game where they have a good player in Saquon Barkley, and yet he is under 3 yards per carry in this game. It's just not been a great season on the ground for Saquon Barkley. What do we make of this, Chris? Because I've got people in the middle of this game tweeting me, Saquon Barkley needs to go in the Coping Corner on the Panic Meter podcast tomorrow. Where are we at with Saquon Barkley and what's going on right now? As we're showing here, by the way, just real quick, Joel Smith, our colleague here, Saquon Barkley, 100-plus yard from scrimmage games, 13 of 16 last year, 0 of 7 so far this year.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about it at some points throughout the earlier parts of the season. It's been something of a running issue for the Eagles is their offensive line. And in this game coming into it, Landon Dickerson was already kind of banged up. They lose Cam Jurgens, their center, and they replace him with Brett Toth, who's been more or less like kicked out the club on multiple pass reps or run blocking reps. So we can see where Saquon Barkley has a lot of the issues that he's been having throughout the season in terms of not being able to have some of the explosive runs that you expect, and also not being as efficient on a down-to-down basis. I mean, right now, through in this game specifically, I mean, 0.28 adjusted yards before contact for Barkley, which is probably one of his lowest marks throughout this entire season, and definitely one of the lower marks as compared to all of the attempts that he had throughout the 2024 season. So if it's going to be a mix of Barkley not having as much, not having the same level of explosiveness because he's 1 year older and has a number of carries on him, and also the offensive line is taking a step back, this is the type of performance, or these are the types of results we should expect to see moving forward. Because looking at their upcoming matchups, I don't really see too many other games where they should have the amount of push or the offensive line should be able to get the same amount of push in order to give Barkley the lanes he needs in order to really be the type of asset that we expected drafting him in the first round.
On the Vikings side of things here, there's no question to me, Chris, that Carson Wentz helps the wide receivers produce. Justin Jefferson had a big game here. Jordan Addison had a big game here. That being said, he is a mess on late downs. Like in critical down and distance situations, Carson Wentz is still Carson Wentz. He goes 5 of 10 for 45 yards, an interception and a sack, and a 22.9 passer rating on 3rd and 4th down in this game. So there's still this kind of weirdness with the J.J. McCarthy injury situation, and yet I continue to not see a lot of evidence that this team is, oh yeah, they're a real contender if they have Carson Wentz behind center. So what's your bet on what happens next week with this Vikings quarterback situation?
My assumption is they're going to try and see what they can get out of J.J. McCarthy. If he can push him or make sure that he gets in a number of full practices so that he can wind up starting under center for the Vikings moving forward, I think that would be the best way to try and approach it. Because, man, I'm with you. I mean, Wentz, he got vaporized on a 3rd down, which wound up turning into a pick 6. I mean, he took a nasty shot to the middle. And so those are the types of plays, though, where you keep making those mistakes. Of course, you would want to try and turn to your rookie passer that you sunk the draft capital into and wanted to at least move away from Sam Darnold and in the offseason. And you would want to see what J.J. McCarthy has. And he's played, like the term you used earlier, up and down football throughout, when he has been able to start. It's just that he's been put in some of those situations where he has had to come from behind or actually try and make plays on his own. But I think now with Jordan Addison back into the fold, we could see a scenario where he does have the pass catchers or at least enough around him so that he can operate as Kevin McCarthy would want him to in this offense. So I'm somewhat more encouraged with the personnel surrounding him. So if we do get him back next week, I would say that they would want to have him starting in this environment versus where things were at in the earlier parts of the season.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think we got to see what he has if he's fully healthy. It's been weird. The reporting around it has been weird. I totally acknowledge that, but at some point we just got to get this guy out there and we got to see what we have here. Yeah. All right, next game up here, Colts 38, Chargers 24. This game was a really fun fantasy game, even if the Colts kind of controlled it throughout. And I want to start on the Colts here because, man, this offense, I said this during the game, this Colts offense is both an extremely talented and deep group. Like they don't have Josh Downs out here in this game, and you didn't even feel that. And like Josh Downs was the guy who led the team in targets in the last 3 weeks combined. And you just take that guy off there and it doesn't even really matter. Doesn't matter at all. And beyond that, I also think they are consistently clean from an operational standpoint. You've got some of these staffs and offenses across the league, Chris, where they can't get plays off. They can't stop getting penalties. They can't get guys lined up correctly, the whole deal. And these are some talented offenses. And the Colts, it just feels completely smooth the entire time. So you get Alec Pierce popping up here for 98 yards. You get Michael Pittman 58 yards and a touchdown on 7 receptions. Tyler Warren has another big game. Oh, yada yada. Jonathan Taylor 3 touchdowns once again. I think this is his 3rd game with 3 rushing touchdowns, I believe. So it's just like this Colts offense, 58% offensive success rate and 18% explosive play rate. That led all offenses this week heading into Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, and to your point earlier about Jonathan Taylor with 3 touchdowns, there have been 6 performances from a running back so far this season with 3 touchdowns. Jonathan Taylor has half of them so far. I mean, it's just crazy to think that this is the type of offense where, I mean, I think the term that I've seen people throwing around on social media right now, they're a wagon. Because if you have a fantasy skill player that's attached to this offense, they're going to wind up scoring or at least have some level of production that you have have some confidence in starting them week in and week out. I mean, we were talking earlier, you pointed out Alec Pierce as a guy that could potentially pick up off the waiver wire and start. 10 freaking targets, just a dude that's like, all right, we've typically seen him as the sacrificial X receiver in the offense in years past. And while I have always wanted to see Alec Pierce at least start to blossom as that type of outside receiver because he comes from my alma mater, University of Cincinnati, this is the type of game that you would want to see from him. And while it's been a mix of they haven't had the right quarterback, they haven't had the right play caller, all of that coming together in this type of offense and in this type of week for this level of opportunity, I mean, it's such an awesome thing to see. And outside of Pierce, like you said, Warren having 5 targets, Pittman having 9 targets, and also Taylor tacking on to his rushing total with work in the receiving game as well with 38 yards. I mean, this is the type of offense that, again, if you have a piece of them, you're not trading them away. You want to see how much you can get out of it because of how well and how efficient they are with Danny Dimes under center for them.
Yeah, just circling back to that Alec Pierce point, because I think this is the season. And I liked Pierce as a prospect, but I kind of said that he was like the bad analysis of what people thought DK Metcalf was, where it was just he lined up on one side of the field and ran goes and slants and like that was and posts, and that was about it. That was truly what Alec Pierce was as a prospect, and it's what Alec Pierce was as a rookie. Kind of was what Alec Pierce was for a long time in the NFL, but this year I think he's really taken his game to another level. And look, I said a lot of dumb stuff on FFL this morning. I'm gonna say a lot of dumb stuff every single season. Let's just put it this way: my boys Jack Besh and Jalen Coker did not get close to my 10 combined receptions bold prediction from the end of that show. I said a lot of dumb stuff, but the one thing I wanted to hammer home there was that Alec Pierce is a sub 10% rostered player, and he plays basically every single snap for this offense, and I think he has evolved his game this year. Like, yeah, he has, I think it's 25, just under 25 air yards per target in this game, so he's still that vertical threat, but you see a lot more. I don't know if you've seen the same thing. I feel like I've seen a lot more big in-breakers, dig routes, things like that. So I just think his game has evolved, and it's something that is probably it's gonna take people a minute to catch up to, because we know Pittman, Tyler Warren's a 1st-round pick. There's a lot of Josh Downs truthers out there, your boy included. People still have like a weird fascination for AD Mitchell, who had 1 target, 1 catch in this game on 5 routes. So the per target routes are going to continue to look cool for AD Mitchell. But Pierce is a guy that I do think will fly under the radar consistently.
But yeah, because people will probably have that bad taste in their mouth for how he had been used in years past. So they would need to see multiple games of him performing well, at least being used well enough in that offense that a lot of that old style of where he had been deployed on the field can essentially be transitioned into, this is the quote unquote new Alec Pierce. He has taken a step forward. He can be used on more of those crossing patterns in the intermediate to deep parts of the field. And now that you have a quarterback that really allows them to access that part of the field, This is where the talent meets the situation and the production now starts to match up with all of it. So I agree with you. I was hoping to see a bit more of it in the earlier parts of Alec Pierce's career, but now with the way that this whole offense is moving, theoretically, we should start to see a bit more of that if the Colts continue to play the way that they are.
He's going to get a bag in free agency next year. That is for
100%.
sure. He's on the last year of his contract. Just last point here on the Colts before we move to the Chargers. How crazy is it? We just talked about this offense for like 5 minutes, and we've just all accepted the fact that Daniel Jones, 288 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 113 pass rating. We don't even say his name. Like we don't even say like, oh my God, what another great game from Danny Dimes, because this is just what he does every single week.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, he just keeps doing this week in and week out. And my thought this morning when we were talking about it on FF Live was that he was going to be pressed into a more up-tempo type passing day. But of course, with Justin Herbert throwing multiple interceptions and really the entire passing game really not being able to force much of a back and forth type matchup for the Colts, yeah, it's just 34 attempts, and we'll just throw close to 300 yards and a couple of touchdowns. And it's just a nice, tidy day, nice, efficient day yet again for Daniel Jones. So hats off to him and the way that Shane Steichen has really kept this offense prepped on a week in, week out basis for Jones to essentially resurrect his career after how many seasons we saw of him being the disappointing quarterback. So I'm completely, I would say, hand up, I'm wrong about how Daniel Jones has been playing so far, thinking that he would need to get pushed in order to play well. But in this case, it's clearly not the situation he needs. He can just be well on his own.
Okay, Chargers side of things here. To me, I think this was the perfect you can see it both ways game from Justin Herbert here, Chris, because one of his interceptions is just really bad. A bunch of people on social media are kind of piling on him and seeming like, hey, this is what keeps him out of that top tier quarterbacks. And then the rest of the game, while under constant duress, I'll check the pressure numbers here in just a second because, this game wrapped up pretty recently. I don't know if I've seen the fully updated ones yet, but it felt like he was constantly under duress, bad offensive line, banged up offensive line. Hopefully Joe Alt can come back next week. 420 yards through the air, 3 touchdowns, and he led the team with 31 rushing yards. So it was just one of those days from Justin Herbert. Like, it feels like it's Groundhog Day with him every single year of his career. These are the games we see.
Yeah, let me know what you see on the pressure rate stuff, because when I looked at it earlier, and it must have been because it was like midway through and still need to update, he was under a 20% pressure rate, which to me seemed kind of odd because I know that he only had a couple. Yeah, that definitely seems low and just didn't match the eye test of how often like we saw him kind of forced out of the pocket. But either way, these are the types of games that, at least for fantasy managers, you would want to have, minus the interceptions, of course, but having them forced into a pass-heavy type of script and having the pass catchers back. I know Quentin Johnston really didn't get there from an opportunity standpoint with his first game back after the hamstring injury, but Keenan Allen putting up just prime Keenan Allen type numbers and Ladd McConkey still being at least a viable option. The one guy that, of course, that we'll have to talk about, I mean, Oronde Gadsden, popping up for like 100+ yards as a receiver in this game. I do wonder if it's just more of, with QJ being, I would say, semi-hobbled in this contest, that's where he winds up picking up some of the slack. But at the very least, if we do get some of those more up-tempo games for Justin Herbert moving forward, because they are forced into those pass-happy scripts, if at least Gadsden falls into that tight end emergency type of option that you would need if you wind up having to start a guy on a weekly basis, that type of thing.
Okay, because we have the best production staff in the entire world here as we're doing a live show, they threw up the pressure stats while we were talking here, and we're showing them on the screen. I didn't even have to look them up. Shout out to the boys in the back. I didn't even have to look this thing up.
They do it all, man.
They do it all. We're just here yapping, and for I mean, Chris is handsome as hell. For me, I'm like halfway acceptable here. And those guys are the ones that are really working here. So again, updated pressure numbers. This comes in from Cody Manning per Next Gen Stats. Justin Herbert faced a career high. So yeah, it was a little low when it was 20%. Yeah, career high, 57.4 pressure rate against the Colts. Completed 19 of 31 under pressure, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick, 252 yards. His 252 passing yards under pressure are the third most by a quarterback since 2018. So yes, Herbert under constant duress, feeding the guys in the passing game. You mentioned some of the highlights there. Keenan Allen, biggest game in weeks. Ladd McConkey leads the team with 15 targets, was kind of the underneath option, which is sort of the theory of Ladd McConkey at this point. Like he's got to be the guy we get it out quick to, because he's the best separator on the team. And yeah, QJ did score a touchdown, wasn't super involved, but was on the field a ton. So that might just be one of those things. But we just talk about rookie tight end, 5th rounder, Oronde Gadsden. 9 targets, leads the team with 164 yards through the air. And this isn't really a one-game fluke either, Chris. It's kind of been building towards this. We've been mentioning it lightly on the show, but definitely time to really take it seriously here. Route rates of 64%, 77%, and 66% the last 3 games. 17 targets combined the last 2 weeks. And I just think this team's going to have to keep throwing the football, and this guy's on the field all the time, as we're seeing. He's just dusted the veteran tight ends on this team and is out there every single week.
Yeah, and that's where I know it's going to be tough for fantasy managers to look at the entire situation and say, well, all right, well, he's already got Quentin Johnson, he's already got Keenan Allen, he's already got Ladd McConkey, and then, all right, so now we have to tack on this 4th new option into this passing game. But if these are going to be the types of games that they're going to have, these jailbreak type pass heavy type of games, and especially next week, if we assume that it's going to be Carson Wentz, as we were just talking about the Vikings passing game, they play the Vikings next week. And if it's going to be Carson Wentz and it's going to be, I'd say, slightly more pass production friendly between both offenses, I mean, we could see a similar script for the Chargers where they're going to have to pass quite a bit in order to keep up with the Vikings offensively. So we could see Gadsden, if he continues on with his route rate, and also how well he performs after the catch as well. I mean, this kind of really does set up for, I wouldn't say breakout, but at least enough that you would want to try and pick him up and see what you can get out of Oronde Gadsden moving forward.
Yeah, Chargers-Vikings TNF this week, so we'll be talking a lot about that game here over the course of the week. So lots to learn for that one. Man, this Chargers offense, I mean, even Trey Harris I thought was fantastic last week after going back charting that film. Like, there's a lot going on here in this Chargers passing game. So let's just get that offensive line healthy. Let's get Amari and Hampton back, and I think this could be one of the most dangerous offenses in the NFL. Speaking of dangerous offense, I mean, that's what we saw a lot of very late in the last game here in the games we care most about. Broncos 33, Giants 32. I mean, this game was so damn crazy. I don't even really know where I want to go with it, but this stat from Adam Schefter, I think, perfectly encapsulates it. The Broncos 33 fourth quarter points. Yes, if you guys remember, I said they scored 33 points in the entire game. Broncos 33 fourth quarter points were the most points in the fourth quarter by any team that had been shut out in the first 3 quarters in NFL history. So I was ready to come on here and be like, what the hell is going on with the Broncos offense?
Right.
And they woke up at the end of this game. Chris, I feel like I actually still need to ask you, like, what the hell is going on with the Broncos offense? What is this unit?
I don't know. And I guess that's the question that I still have about Bo Nix as a passer and this entire offense, because even if we look at this, let's take the real football portion at it for a half second. If you were to line up all of these skill players for the Broncos, from the running backs to the wide receivers and even Evan Ingram as a tight end, how many of them would you really say confidently that you say, yep, I'm starting them on a week in, week out basis? Maybe 2? Maybe 3, because it's not.
Yeah.
And that's the tough part, because Bo Nix, for the fact that he wound up getting into the end zone, I think a couple of times as a rusher, and still connecting enough downfield in order to move them into field goal in order for them to pull out this win. I mean, still, it's just around like 8 yards per attempt. I mean, they're trying to dial up some play action shots here and there, and he winds up connecting with Courtland Sutton enough. But who is the wide receiver 2 in this offense? How are we going to, where else can we find that production, at least consistently enough, that we want to start some of those other pass catchers attached to Bo Nix? Because it's been, at least for me, looking at him, even through this game in week 7, it's been up and down enough that really the only guys that I trust out of it are J.K. Dobbins, the running back. It's Courtland Sutton as their wide receiver 1. And then really Evan Ingram, if you want to put him into that middle class of tight ends, but even that can be something of some level of volatility on a weekly basis. But really, those are the only few guys that I have enough confidence in for the way that they've been used, and especially how Bo Nix has been operating as a passer. Because to your point, 33 points in the fourth quarter. For the first 3 quarters, a lot of us were asking those same questions about what this Sean Payton offense is with Bo Nix in his second year. And while they get the win, I still have those questions about, well, what is this going to look like in week 8? What is this going to look like in weeks 14, 15, and 16, just because of the level of play that we've seen out of this entire offense so far?
Yeah, I mean, Bo Nix throws 2 touchdowns in this game. One of them goes to backup running back RJ Harvey, who touched the football 5 times, 5 times for 2 yards from scrimmage, which was the 2-yard touchdown reception. That's where he got his 2 yards from. 4 carries for 0 yards. So he wasn't really involved. The other touchdown goes to Troy Franklin, who turned 10 targets into 3 receptions, and that was caught off a deflection. And that at one point, that was the weirdest point of the game, where there were so many times, Chris, where I thought, and we'll just transition this into the Giants here, I thought, man, this is just everything is turning up New York here, because Troy Franklin catches that touchdown off the deflection, and then immediately after that, the Giants turn around and get a deflected pass that falls into the hands of tight end Theo Johnson, who just scampers down the field for 41 yards for a touchdown. I'm like, damn, everything is just that's just like the things are going your way here for the New York Giants. And then they end up losing the game. So, I mean, credit to Jackson Dart. This is a tough matchup, tough environment, and he battled in this game. I mean, they definitely that DPI at the end on Riley Moss, I thought was a little silly to get put them. That was bad. To put them down at the 1 yard line, and Dart pushes the touchdown in. But before that, I don't want to use that to take away. Again, that was another moment where I was like, damn, things are just coming up New York here. I don't want to use that as a thing to take away from the Giants here, because this was really a very impressive game, I thought, from Jackson Dart.
Yeah, and for how well that we've had, how much regard we had put for the Broncos defense coming into this game. And this was also the game where we thought that that Denver was going to really play up to it, just because of the fact that it was the unveiling of Demaryius Thomas's bust, like outside it for the Ring of Honor for that game. So a lot of just general level of emotion for the Broncos, and that we would think that they would wind up stomping the Giants in this one. But yeah, I mean, Jackson Dart, first quarterback to face the Broncos with 3 touchdown passes. I mean, one of the lower pressure rates for any quarterback to face them so far, like through 6-7 weeks. I mean, with the way that Dart played going up against this Broncos defense that we had feared, especially for any wide receiver ones having to go up against Patrick Surtain, without having Malik Neighbors on the opposite side of the field, I was like, is this the same Giants offense that we were thinking was going to be without Neighbors on the field for them? I mean, tossing to Wan'Dale Robinson, Theo Johnson, didn't even have Darius Slayton in this game as well. I mean, having at least the fewer number of pass catches available to him and putting up this much production. Yeah, the fact that they lost is going to probably weigh heavy on the rest of the squad, but still, with the way that Dart played, you can see why at least Dable had enough fascination with him to draft him in the first place.
Oh, no question. I think we just put up the tweet from Steve Palazzolo there a minute ago, and it's just the best way that you can say this about the Giants is that everything feels different about this team since Jackson Dart took over. And I mean, yeah, if I was them, I'd be trying to get a wide receiver before the trade deadline, because Wan'Dale Robinson, 12 targets, 95 yards, but Daniel Bellinger pops it like busted touchdown for busted reception for a touchdown there. Theo Johnson, the long scamper. So there's some, I don't want to call it flukiness, but there's some, things that broke their way. But clearly Dart has played well for them. The ball came out fast today. He made good decisions for the most part. I'd be trying to get him a little bit more help from the perimeter wide receiver perspective because of all the issues that they had there. So really can't ask for much more other than this game. You're going to feel irritated that you didn't win it for sure. But again, it was a good performance from the rookie quarterback. All right. That does it for the games we care most about. Now let's get into the games that we sort of care about. And we're going to stick in the late window here. Thought this would be one of the headliner games here, Chris Allen, but it is not, because Cowboys blow out the Commanders 44-22. I think we can start on the Commanders side of things here. Usually start with the winner, but I feel like we can start with the Commanders here because they already came into this game down pretty bad from an injury perspective on the offense. They were missing Deebo Samuel. They're missing Terry McLaurin. And then in the third quarter, Jaden Daniels goes out for the rest of the game due to a hamstring injury. Marcus Mariota, who usually it's like, oh, well, Mariota can come in here and run the offense pretty damn well when Jaden's not in there. He comes in there and immediately throws a pick six. Doesn't make things any better. So I don't really know what to say about the Commanders other than they've just had some pretty rotten injury luck so far this year.
Well, and then also we were talking earlier this morning about the potential for a guy like Luke McCaffrey to get a little bit more run, and he winds up having to go to the injury tent after he attempts. I would say this: don't try and hurdle a guy unless you're pretty confident you're going to be able to clear the person, because he winds up getting upended and he falls on his back and hits his head and winds up at least missing a couple of plays before getting back in. But yeah, if you're pass game features or is headlined by Jalen Lane, Chris Moore, and 30-plus-year-old Zach Ertz, you're probably going to be in for a bad day. And Jaden Daniels' injury is probably just the icing on the cake to where the Commanders are at from an offensive injury standpoint. So yeah, we were hoping for a bit more production for the Commanders just because they were facing the Cowboys defense. But if you are this banged up and you are missing this many superstars on your team, it's going to be tough sledding regardless of who you are from an offensive standpoint.
Yeah, this from Next Gen Stats. Jaden Daniels struggled against man coverage, completing only 3 of 10 passes for 39 yards, which, by the way, that's a little bit of a new wrinkle for Matt Eberflus. They're throwing some man coverage out there when they've pretty much been strictly zone. He carved up the zone, 9 of 12 for 117 yards and a touchdown. And that just feels like a, hey, we don't have our guys type of stat, right? We're running out Chris Moore in the year 2025. Luke McCaffrey is intriguing, but I mean, come on. Jalen Lane, a day 3 rookie. Those are your main receivers. Your best guy is Zach Ertz. Like, yeah, you're gonna do well against zone coverage, but you're not gonna beat man coverage. Hopefully this team can get healthy here pretty soon, because like I do think there's still some intrigue here, but they're gonna start to fall behind at some point. I mean, again, you lose this game to Dallas. That's tough, but we just got to get to a point where the offense is a little more fully stocked so that they're not in these negative game scripts, which are also, just bad news for Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. He's a guy who is a game script sensitive back. So he's another player that suffers in these environments. On the Dallas side of things, it's pretty sick to see CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens playing together. I mean, that was pretty electric.
Yeah.
Dak Prescott continues to ball out. You highlighted him this morning. You had to be pretty happy with what you saw here.
Yeah, and you and I, we had the conversation, I believe it was last week, when we knew that at least there was a chance that CeeDee Lamb was going to return. And how would this offense operate with 2 essentially wide receiver ones operating in this game? And you laid out really well that with the way that CeeDee Lamb operates, with how he plays on the field, he's more or less their power slot. Pickens playing more on the outside. And with how often Dak Prescott dropbacks to pass, there's enough production, or there's enough opportunity in this offense for both to eat. And we really saw that in this game, where Pickens just making yet another highlight reel catch, like multiple highlight reel catches. I mean, on multiple times throughout the game. And of course, CeeDee Lamb getting loose for a deep score. I think it was like 46 yards or something along those lines. So this is a type of push and pull or type of wide receiver core that you essentially want, where you have a top end or high end quarterback that's willing to push the ball downfield in Dak Prescott, and you have 2 solid receivers that are able to be on the opposite end of those passes, and that is CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. So this is the type of offense that we would want for fantasy purposes, and really showing out against the Commanders defense, which we knew to be something of a sieve, but still, this is what we really want from a fantasy standpoint.
Yeah, George Pickens also drew a DPI, at least one in this game. Might have been a couple, but I knew he drew one very early from Marshawn Lattimore, which I joked was at minus 500 in the sports books before the game that Marcus Lattimore was going to commit a DPI on George Pickens. So, yeah, obviously 4 for 82. It's not quite the eruption that you were getting from George Pickens, but you're not complaining about an 82-yard game from one of your starting receivers. That's perfectly fine. So, yeah, there's truly nothing went wrong for Dallas from an offensive perspective in this game. 116 yards and a touchdown for Javonte Williams on the ground. Jake Ferguson, 7 targets, 2 touchdowns, 29 yards. It just continues to go for Dallas. So, yeah, I love this offense from a fantasy standpoint. I love this offense from a real-life standpoint, and I hope this team can stay competitive throughout the course of the season. All right. Next game up we'll talk about here. Again, this is in the late window. Packers 27, Cardinals 23. The Packers tried to mess around here, Chris, and make this weird at the end, but Micah Parsons ultimately calls game here with 3 sacks in this one, brings down Jacoby Brissett in key moments, and the Packers offense does what it does. A banged-up Josh Jacobs finds the end zone twice. Tucker Kraft continues to give the middle finger to touchdown regression. 10 targets. He gets into the end zone, a couple monster plays late. And again, the Packers just keep on rolling here. They escape a potential road disaster against Arizona.
So this is where, again, as fantasy analysts, we always try and preach at least some level of caution. And it was, Josh Jacobs, he's going to be a game time decision. The calf injury, he's sick. Emmanuel Wilson gets getting called up. we should, I mean, maybe if you have Wilson, I mean, maybe see what you can get out of it because Josh Jacobs might be limited. Well, yeah, he was limited, just 13 carries, still winds up getting BS 2 touchdowns afterwards. It didn't even matter, right? It didn't even matter if we told people to see what you can get out of him. Like none of that stuff mattered afterwards.
Yeah.
It's just, so that's what I was talking about in the intro, where we can plan and make as many like calls as we want to about some of these players and how they're going to play, but the players just go off and do their own thing, man. They wind up busting into the end zone a couple of times. But for the passing game, also the thing that I wanted to at least note and see if you saw the same thing, I wouldn't say the production was there from Matthew Golden in this game, but at least on his 4 targets, a couple of snags that he got across the middle of the field, enough to say that I'm seeing at least a little bit more from him at least each week, a couple of catches here and there, a couple of plays here and there that I'm thinking even with even with Christian Watson coming back, and even this game, Dante and Wisk going down with, I believe, a calf injury of his own, there should be enough in this passing game for me to at least be somewhat intrigued and a little bit more impressed with Matthew Gold on a week in, week out basis. But did you see the same thing?
Yeah, and most importantly, I agree with you about the plays. I mean, I think he's made key plays each of the last couple of weeks. But in this game, he runs 27 routes, which Romeo Doubs leads the team with 28, Tucker Kraft 27. So the Wicks injury maybe is a part of that. And I mean, they're down pretty bad in the wide receiver room right now. Obviously, Wicks being banged up. They're still waiting on Christian Watson. Jaden Reed is on IR. I don't think it's like Savion Williams, obviously just 3 routes. He's like a gimmick player right now, not a real deal wide receiver. So I think that's just, again, a really good sign for Golden. You want to see it continue. I don't know that he's ever going to emerge as the true wide receiver 1. And I mean, because Romeo Doubs is playing so well, but if he's going to be on the field for 82% of the routes and he is making these plays, we can trust him as sort of a boom bust flex. I think that's kind of where we're at right now.
No, I agree with that. And my only concern would be, like, to your point, is we get this Packers wide receiver group completely healthy. And even Tucker Kraft, because he's been managing his own injury throughout the last month-ish or so. So if this Packers entire pass catching group is completely healthy by the end of the season, where does Golden really fit into that group? And that's kind of tough to say at this point. But still, the first round draft capital that the Packers put into him, you can see why they wound up putting that into a receiver like Matthew Golden, just with the few plays that he's making each week so far.
And just on the Josh Jacobs thing, it's so funny because he plays about 44% of the snaps in the first half, which, yeah, I think you could feel that. You saw more Brooks, you saw more Wilson. And then in the second half, it's 67%. They're like, all right, time to win the football game. Like, Josh, I know you're not feeling so good. We're going to need you out there, buddy. We're going to need you out there making plays. So that was good to see if you started him in fantasy. On the Cardinals side of things, I think we know what to do with the running backs. You hope you don't have to start one of these guys unless you're in a super deep league. But what did you think about the Jacoby Brissett-led passing game? Just for some stats, 69.4% completion rating, 110.8 passer rating, 13 targets for Trey McBride, 2 touchdowns as well.
So you don't want to have to say there's going to be a quarterback controversy, but I would say with the way that Brissett is playing, and it's not just the production, right? I mean, having 300 plus passing yards last week, and then also around 280 in this game. It's not just the production, but it's how the offense moves and how the offense operates. More under center, a little bit more play action. The things that having a quarterback and the style that Kyler Murray likes to play in limits the playbook for an offensive play caller like Drew Petzing. So, I mean, we've seen this now over the past couple of games where this offense starts to open up a bit more. And of course, causation, correlation, you don't want to lean too much into it. But of course, seeing Trey McBride start to score touchdowns almost immediately after Kyler Murray leaves the starting role for Brissett to take over. This is the type of stuff where now you can have a bit more confidence about some of those pass catchers. So am I going to be starting Jacoby Brissett each week? No, absolutely not. But now do I have a bit more confidence in Marvin Harrison Jr.? A little bit. Trey McBride? Absolutely. So this is the kind of thing where you see the quarterback go out and you see a different one come in, and the different styles that they have. I mean, this is the type of stuff where, again, I do have some concern about what Kyler Murray is going to look like for this Cardinals offense if he winds up coming back at all this season.
Sounds like he will. Gannon at least said after the game that it sounds like Kyler Murray will be the starter when he is healthy. But I do agree that there's just something different about the offense when Brissett is in there. He, I think, just executes it a little bit better in structure. The problem is he is a complete statue in the pocket, like a sack waiting to happen. So he can get out and move a little bit, but there's just no creativity within the pocket, like no weird arm angles, any of that stuff. And we saw that again when Micah Parsons was like, all right, I'm time to end the game here. He can go ahead and do that because of where Brissett is, and it's not going to. And Brissett also can be pretty like brutal from a ball placement standpoint, again, when he gets pushed off of his spot. So it's not as if he's some kind of perfect answer here, but I do agree with you that just in structure, it feels a little bit cleaner with him. All right, let's go to the next game here. Bears 26, Saints 14. The Chicago Bears run game, Chris, continues to be absolutely electric for the second straight week. This is, again, pre-Sunday Night Football, 183.5 rushing yards per game, which is an NFL high. 46% of their carries the last 2 weeks have gone for 5+ yards, 21% for 10+ yards. Another excellent day for DeAndre Swift, but even Kyle Monangai got in here for a season high 16 opportunities as well.
Yeah, so that was kind of the other part to Ben Johnson coming down from Detroit to Chicago. It wasn't just could he fix Caleb Williams as a passer, but could you start to see a bit more efficiency out of this running game? And with Swift coming into this game with the Q-tab, with the groin injury that he sustained earlier in the parts of the practice week, I mean, what was that going to look like? And it didn't matter. I mean, 222 total rushing yards on the ground between both him and Monangai. And now over the next 2 weeks, the two defenses that the Chicago Bears get to face, Baltimore and Cincinnati. Those would be, if I had Swift, or even if I wound up going to the waiver wire to pick up a Monangai, those would be the types of defenses I would want to have at least a running back going to face against. So with the way that Johnson's operating this entire offense as a whole, kind of a down game for Caleb Williams, but still the level of efficiency that they're putting out, you kind of want to have at least a few more pieces from this offense that you would have thought coming into the season.
Yeah, it's nice that they can rely on this ground game while their quarterback's going through a little bit of ups and downs coming out of the bye week here. But yeah, definitely you can tell that Ben Johnson went into the lab in the bye week and was like, I am fixing this running game. There is no question I'm coming out here and I'm going to lean into the strengths of the backs, which I think they've done really well. On the Saints side of things, Chris, I thought the passing offense wasn't terrible down to down. But this is probably the first game of the season where we really saw Spencer Rattler put the ball in harm's way a couple of times, just some ill-advised throws. However, the good news for fantasy, Chris Olave had the best game of his season, finally turning in some of those close misses into big plays.
Yeah, and I was talking earlier today about betting Spencer Rattler's rushing prop line just for how efficient he's been as a scrambler and all that. And as I was rambling earlier today, in the back of my mind, I was like, Dennis Allen is the defensive coordinator for the Bears. He used to coach the Saints. He probably knows how to at least short circuit a lot of what Spencer Rattler tries to do. It skipped my mind until I was talking about it earlier. But no, I'm with you. There's been enough out of Rattler just as a passer where, yes, he's going to have some of those errant throws. We saw enough of that when he was used in spot starts last season. But if he can still continue to feed Chris Olave for multiple targets, Rashid Shaheed actually leading the team in targets this game. Those are and also Juwan Johnson also being useful as a tight end. Those are the things that we care about, at least from a fantasy standpoint, because nobody was rushing in trying to draft Spencer Rattler as a quarterback. But were we looking to Chris Olave? Yes. Rashid Shaheed? Yes. And even Juwan Johnson as a late run tight end. And all of them are still continuing to produce for us. So I think that's at least the thing that I'm taking away from the Saints passing game.
We probably haven't talked enough, though, about how the Saints running game is damn near useless. Alvin Kamara on the season has a 33% rushing success rate. That is 34th out of 38 running backs with 50-plus carries. These are the running backs that are lower heading into Sunday Night Football. Nick Chubb, Christian McCaffrey, Chase Brown, Bucky Irving. I know that those are some names there, but, I mean, those are also not good rush games so far this season. So Kamara is a guy that, I mean, he probably, I don't even know if people are panicking about him. Nobody's sending him into the panic meter, or maybe if they have, I've forgotten. He's probably like a total coping corner candidate at this point.
I would agree. And also this game, if I'm remembering right, Kendre Miller went out with a concussion. I forget at which point during the game. Injury. Yes.
Of course, Dennis Allen back in the building, and you know, people are finally like, he's away from Dennis Allen, and then he gets hurt with Dennis Allen in the freaking building.
Allen probably on the other sideline, just like, I told you. I told y'all. Yeah. But still in this game, after Kendre Miller gets removed from it, just 3 targets for Alvin Kamara. So I don't know if it was a game plan type of thing or Kellen Moore just saw something in the Bears secondary that he wanted to continue to try and press with Spencer Rattler. But just that I guess not seeing that shift in usage and seeing more targets from Kamara, I would have expected that. But without it, you do have to wonder what is Kamara's fantasy value moving forward, because if the Saints aren't really going to be this rushing attack that we would expect, and Kamara's also not going to be used as a receiver, then yeah, I'm with you. I would assume that a lot of folks are going to be panicking about what his fantasy value is going to look like throughout the rest of the season.
Last game here in this section, and sadly, we do have to care about this mess of a football game because there's a lot of big names and big storylines. Rams 35, Jaguars 7 over there in London, giving the people a show internationally. Really quickly on the Rams here, Chris, we did see a split backfield in this game. 52% of the running back touches for Kyren Williams, 48% for Blake Corum. Not sure what to make of that. And then meanwhile, speaking of split, Los Angeles goes from the most concentrated passing game in the NFL to 10 guys catching a pass in this one. 5 touchdowns for Matthew Stafford. 3 of them go to Davante Adams. And especially early on in the game, basically every eligible receiver, Matthew Stafford's throwing him a target in this game. So that's just good coaching here.
Was it National Tight Ends a week? That's next week. And so I don't know why Stafford is trying to pull out all of this stuff. He's a week early.
Well, man. He's ahead. He's international time. He's ahead.
Oh, that's on
right.
The clock. Yeah, that must be it, because they were ahead on the clock. He thought it was week 8 instead of week 7, trying to get Colby Parkinson in the end zone.
Well, they're going to be on the bye next week too, so that's not really fair, That's
probably it. Yeah, he knew he wasn't going to be playing. We should have seen this coming, man. We should have thought about this beforehand. Anyway, I would say the big takeaway, at least for most fantasy managers, is the fact that, yes, it was more of a spread out passing game, but who was the wide receiver catching the touchdowns? Who's the guy getting those fade routes into the end zone and coming down to them? It was Davante Adams, which coming into this game without Puka Nacua being there, you would expect him to at least be the one to benefit from Nakua's absence. So while he didn't wind up having a 15, 20 target type of game or anything along those lines, at least from a production standpoint, and with them going into the bye, and we should expect to see Nacua back, having Adams as the guy that to get all of those touchdowns or at least get the most fantasy work, at least that's what you would want to see.
All right, let's talk about the Jaguars.
Do we have to?
I mean,
well, Travis Hunter. That's good.
Yeah. We at least have to talk about Travis Hunter saving himself from the coping corner. Wish it could have happened in a different game where his team isn't getting obliterated, whacked overseas in this one. However, this was pretty clearly a breakthrough performance for Travis Hunter. Ran a route on 90% of the dropbacks. Again, topped his season high from last week. Target on 28% of those. 41% snaps outside, 59% snaps in the slot, 14 targets, 8 catches, 101 yards, and a touchdown in this game. I know it came late. I totally understand that. That's what happens when your team is bad. You're going to get production late. But, man, the plays were good. It wasn't like, the Rams were just in prevent defense or anything like that. Those were legit some big boy wide receiver stuff. So that was good to see. But it also comes on the back of another rough outing for Brian Thomas Jr. He got banged up in this one. A couple drops. Trevor Lawrence is Trevor Lawrence. Parker Washington has 10 targets, and he can't catch. And he's like, I like Parker. By the way, I like Parker Washington. I think he's an interesting role player as a slot guy. They're throwing him the football like 50 yards down the field.
Yes.
What do we do with all of that information I just threw out there, Chris?
Neither of us are in any position to question Liam Cohen and how he deploys his wide receivers out in the field.
No.
And neither of us are quarterbacks of the same ilk of Trevor Lawrence to question, why are you trying to throw high to at least 2 wide receivers that are at least 6 foot plus in Brian Thomas and Parker Washington? Because I thought Brian Thomas got hurt even before he went out with the shoulder or wrist thing towards the back end of the game when Trevor Lawrence threw high and Brian Thomas came down on either his hip, his back, or something along those lines. So, yeah, it's just Lawrence and his inconsistent accuracy. I won't say he's completely inaccurate quarterback, but just missing high on a number of throws with wide receivers that you would think would be able to at least present enough of a target that he can wind up hitting them either in stride or at least towards the boundary where they're not having to jump in order to catch some of those targets. At least that's my general concern about this offense, because I think Liam Cohen still can call a right game. He makes all the right decisions. The fourth down plays and him being aggressive, but then just not coming up with the conversions. Those are the types of plays where a lot of folks will question why you continue to go for it. But in most situations, that's what they're supposed to do from an analytics-based standpoint. But having this type of, I would say, this lack of synchronicity between him and his wide receivers, that's where you get some of those, say, highly volatile plays between him and Brian Thomas on the outside. Same thing with those deep shots to Parker Washington. I mean, Parker Washington averaged over 20 air yards per target in this contest. I would expect that out of a guy that typically plays in the slot. I don't think you would want that for a slot receiver.
No.
So here, that's where, again, how they're trying to move the ball and how they're using the receivers is just something of a head scratcher from a weekly basis for them.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with the offense structurally. Again, I keep saying I think this is a well-designed passing game. I think that I don't have an issue with that, but I just think they've been dealing with a lot in terms of Travis Hunter. Like, what do we want to do with him? In this game, it was clear, like, we're making him a wide receiver and we're going to make him a focal point of our offense. We'll see what it looks like. It's been kind of a moving target. And also then again, they're going to get criticized because he wasn't playing a ton of defense and they're getting fried on defense. But so it's a little bit just like a lose-lose proposition for them, but they really need him on offense. I think they're starting to come around to that. And like, we've got to get him ramped up over there so he's not making the pre-snap mistakes and nonsense like that. Cause at this point with BTJ, like, they've tried to really make it happen for him and lean into him in the ways that have been smart, but you can't just not have him run routes over the middle of the field. And I think that Cohen expressed some frustrations about just the up and down nature of it. And I know he's frustrated. He's got to be frustrated with Lawrence as well. So again, they've just been dealing with a lot from a personnel standpoint, but they go into the bye. Hopefully they can get in the lab, get Brian Thomas Jr., kind of healthier. Cause I agree with you. It looked like he banged up his shoulder just running at one point, which I don't, again, get him healthier, just have a reset moment for him. Trevor's Trevor. I don't really know what to do with that, but I think that we come out of the bye week and I think Travis Hunter might be like the top target player on this team. It seems like it's sort of trending that way. It probably needs to trend that way. They got to get more out of this offense so far. So it's weird coming into like 2 weeks ago or coming out of 2 weeks ago. I felt really good about where Jacksonville was at. These last two games have obviously been a little bit concerning against some good teams, but all right, that does it for the games we sort of care about. Now let's rapid fire this thing on the way out with the games that could have been an email, starting with Chris. Patriots 31, Titans 13. Drake May continues to be one of the best downfield passers in the NFL. He had 6 completions of 15-plus yards in this game, Chris. 2 apiece to Kayshon Boutte, Matt Collins, and Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, and as well as he's played as a passer, just the number of hits he was taking in this game, man. 4 sacks, 5 quarterback hits. He wound up having to go to the blue tent for a concussion check midway through the game. So that's where, as well as he's been playing, it's just the Patriots offensive line and also his penchant for trying to hit some of those home run swings. So he hangs on the ball. I wouldn't say too long, but long enough to let those routes develop downfield to Boutte or Hollins or whomever. I mean, that's just how he plays the game. It's the double-edged sword aspect to how May likes to play. So that's my only biggest takeaway from that. And then of course, we'll have to talk about the backfield split, because if you roster TreVeyon Henderson, it's Joe over, brother. Like, there's no way he's coming back after how poorly, or I guess how little he was used in this game.
74% of the running back touches went to Ramondre Stevenson, 88 yards from scrimmage, 1 touchdown. Practice squad running back Terrell Jennings played more than TreVeyon Henderson in this game. So, just not happening. Just not happening right now for TreVeyon Henderson. We'll see if he can turn around by the end of his rookie season. But that's the end of the TreVeyon Henderson conversation for the time being. On the Titans side of it, 49% offensive success rate was the second best result of the season for them so far. So there's that for the Tennessee Titans. So congratulations to Mike McCoy for, at least for a little bit in the first quarter, keeping it interesting. That's about the best we can say for Tennessee, Chris.
Yeah, that's about it. On the first drive or whatever, they actually looked like fairly good. Hit the Titans DK, rookie wide receiver. Yeah, DK on a sail corner concept, which actually looked pretty solid. So the level of I would say more from Ward, just overall, just higher efficiency and him being a bit more comfortable without Brian Callahan being there. At least he got that bump for week one, or the first week without Callahan. But let's see how much that's going to continue to happen in the weeks following that. So that's my really only other takeaway from this game.
All right, Panthers 13, Jets 6. On the Jets side of things, Aaron Glenn benched Justin Fields in the middle of this game after scolding reporters for even asking about his status after last week. So that's how that's going over there. Yeah. That's how that's going for the Jets. I really, truly don't have anything else to say about New York other than that. Meanwhile, the Panthers' usage for the running backs went drive by drive. As expected, Rico Dowdle was more efficient because he is not coming off a damn calf injury. Also, Rico Dowdle is awesome, so there is that. But 55% of the running back rushes went his way. Chuba Hubbard was at 45%. He did lead the way in snaps for Hubbard because his drive just went longer, so I wouldn't read too much into that. So just right now, Dowdle had more carries, more production in this game. I think it'll kind of go like that for this team where they lean on the run game. And Bryce Young also got banged up in this one. That's another thing to mention coming out of this one. We'll see about his status. It's an ankle injury for him.
Yeah, that was the big thing, at least for the Panthers. But yeah, to your point, I think Bill Barnwell tweeted out after the first drive, Chuba Hubbard, he got all 6 of the running back touches and 12 of 13 snaps. Not a single snap for Rico Dowdle, but they wound up flip-flopping back and forth. And actually, if I'm remembering right, it was an explosive carry for Dowdle on his first touch, and then also a 17-yard reception on his first target. So you can see why they wound up trying to have that hot hand approach between the two running backs throughout this game. But also, I mean, Xavier Legette popping up for at least a somewhat decent game going up against the Jets, like corner 2. Yeah, all right. So we'll see if there's anything to build off of it. But if it's Andy Dalton versus Bryce Young, I don't know if we can really trust any of the pass catchers for the Panthers.
Yeah, Xavier Legette saw Jalen Coker come back. He said, time to lock in, big boy. Let's go. So, 9 catches for 92 yards and a touchdown for Xavier Legette. That continues the trend of the number 2 receiver, and he was the second most routes player for the game, which is to be expected. He was the guy to go off. That's kind of the trend against the Jets. All right, next game here. My God, Chiefs 31, Raiders 0. Brother. Our buddy Nate Tice tweeted this out. Yeah, brother. Our buddy Nate Tice tweeted this out. The Raiders ran 30 plays today against the Chiefs. This is the fewest amount of plays an NFL offense has run in a game since at least 2002, according to True Media. So, again, I say, that's how that went. I mean, 2002, I think, yeah, I was in like 6th grade or something. So, again, that's how that went for the Raiders. I don't even know what else to say. By the way, Nate also noted the Raiders had 5 successful plays, so like 17% successful play rate for the Las Vegas Raiders in this one. I don't really know if we should even say anything beyond that for the Raiders. The big story was the return of Rashee Rice on the Chiefs side of things. In the first half, because if you missed it, 31-0, we saw some Gardner Minshew in this one. In the first half of this game, Rashee Rice only ran a route on 51.7% of the dropbacks, so he was not a full-time player, but he was targeted on 53% of those, 35% target share in the first half, 8 targets, 6 catches, 36 yards, and a pair of touchdowns.
Yeah, for as often as the Chiefs wound up having the ball, Nate Taylor of ESPN noted during the game, several defensive players, Jalen Watson, Drew Tranquill, are literally having to stretch on the sideline while watching the Chiefs offense operate. That's where we were at in terms of how bad the Raiders were in this game. But seeing Rice back on the field, and to your point, not really seeing him in that full-time type of role. I mean, yeah, 29%, 20 to 30%, 29% target rate, and operating in the slot. The one thing that I did kind of take away from this, 0.8 air yards per target for Rashee Rice. So really working right along the line of scrimmage in this game. So I would assume that's going to change moving forward. Yeah. Uptick in routes and maybe getting them a bit farther downfield. But regardless, fantasy managers probably don't get points for how many air yards they're getting on a per target basis. But either way, the production has to be nice. And seeing this entire Chiefs offense rolling, whether it was any of the pass catchers or even rookie Brashard Smith as a pass catcher with Kareem Hunt going down in this game, which should be an injury we'll have to at least keep note of on the waiver wire for Smith. Again, Chiefs back to full strength. Patrick Mahomes. I mean, this entire team is probably going to make another deep playoff run for sure.
Yeah, we'll be talking more about this updated pass catching core with Rashee Rice back in the mix throughout the week. Might be talking about some Miami Dolphins troubles here, which is our last game to talk about. Browns 31, Dolphins 6. I mean, Dolphins, bro, it has never been more over than getting blown out by the Browns like this.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, start every running back, every starting running back that's going against the Miami Dolphins. You're going to go ahead and plug that guy in your fantasy football lineup. 25 carries for Quinshon Judkins and 3 touchdowns against the Miami Dolphins today.
Yeah, what was the Mike McDaniel quote from early in the season? We're just one day closer to death. This is it, man. This is what he's talking about right here, because this is where we're at. Quinshon Judkins, a couple of goal line plays where he gets snapped directly to him out of the Wildcat. I think the first touchdown he had out of that formation, he winds up bobbling it for a half second, gets hit behind the line of scrimmage, spins, and still winds up getting into the end zone. I mean, there's really just no teeth to the Dolphins' rush defense at this point. So whomever you got, to your point, start your running backs against the Dolphins. And for pretty much anybody else, the only other thing that I would note is both of these teams played up tempo, and this is the second game for the Browns that we've seen just a high number of plays, 110 total plays in this game that featured heavy rain for the first half and 20 plus mile per hour winds. I thought it was going to be more of a slog, but seeing how many dropbacks for Dylan Gabriel, the rush attempts for Quinshon Judkins, and also whatever we saw out of the Dolphins side of things, kind of a up-tempo match, just given the elements in this game.
We put the stat up earlier from Next Gen that the Browns used an extra offensive lineman on 41% of their plays, which was the most by an NFL offense this season. I mean, they were not messing around. They knew what they were doing in this one, which was they were going to run all over that Miami Dolphins defense.
Yeah.
We'll see. I definitely think it's going to be a tough week for the Miami Dolphins, and we'll see what happens with the Jalen Waddle injury, the Darren Waller injury to Mike McDaniel, the whole deal. It's felt like a lost season since before this season kicked off, and it's not really gotten any better throughout the course of the year. This show, though, was great and only continues to get better every single week. Chris, I appreciate you doing this one with me. This was a wild, especially the late window was a wild one, buddy, so I appreciate you jumping on.
Yeah, we started off with something of a slog overseas, but then we wind up with wild game after wild game after wild game. This is why we do it, man. I mean, trying to have as much fun catching all the action, and it's also a good thought exercise to take away as many narratives heading into the following week. So, I mean, plenty of stuff that we'll get to over the coming days before we get into week 8, but no, always happy to talk ball with you, brother.
Always good to talk ball right here on this show. That is going to do it for this episode. On Monday, Justin Boone joins me for the People's Panic Meter. There's a lot to chew on coming out of these games, so make sure you get your responses in. If you want to make sure you get to the front of the line, email us, fantasymailbag@yahoosports.com. Voice memos, videos are encouraged, but if you just want to write out your feelings, that is totally fine too. As I always say, try to get those submissions in by 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern-ish on Monday. Don't be sending them in at 4:30. They're not going to – I shouted out the producers earlier, best in the business. They can't just flip those things around right before we go live in 30 minutes. So try to get those things in between 2 and 3 p.m. Eastern. Before that, obviously very encouraged. We will get to all of those on Monday live right here, 5 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. Until then, we are out.